Hello.
Hello, do you hear me over there?
Yeah,
Oh, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine. I don't see you.
No, my camera's not working at the moment.
Ah, okay. No problem then. So, how much time do we have, please?
Sorry, I missed that. You cut out.
How much time do we have?
How long do you need? I'm okay for a while.
Okay, so let's start.
Okay.
Uh, First off, I'd like to congratulate you on this new album.
Oh, thank you.
I like it very, very much, and frankly saying, I was largely surprised by it because I didn't expect it to be a vocal album and a rock album in a good sense of word.
Well, that's really kind. Thank you. No, it's I wanted to do something that people weren't expecting.
My starting point for that was from Brush and Stone by Rick and Gordon, and I have to say that how better put it, uh, that album to my ears didn't gel so much because your dad was playing his pieces and Gilstrap was playing his pieces. But how did you pull it together this time to make it a really c- collaborative work?
I started by not listening to the album that Dad and Gordon did. Gordon gave me a copy of it, but I thought I didn't want to listen to it. I didn't want to hear what they'd done before. And I had this idea when we first started working on the album that it had to be not a concept album, but it had to be an album with a theme that made sense throughout it. And I also knew that we would have a lot of people that wanted to hear us doing instrumental music. But I also knew that there were a lot of people that had followed my rock band and had watched me in Yes, and we used to be playing with vocalists. So I suggested to Gordon that we put together a project where we went from one type of music to the other, very similar in the way I suppose that Fragile by Yes back in the 1970s was. You know, it went from a big rock song to an acoustic piece. And he liked the idea. And as we started putting music together, we found that the collaborative songs, or the songs that I've come up with, really worked with his guitar style. And I think part of that is down to the fact that Gordon is a very unique guitarist in the same way that, say, Steve Howe is. He doesn't sound like anybody else. Therefore, when you put a keyboard player, maybe like myself, who plays in a slightly unusual way, and you put the two together and you really spend time crafting a song around it, you can come up with something that's a little bit different to what other people are doing.
Yeah, but lately people have been expecting Gordon to make another acoustic album, but
Yeah.
it's an electric album that you did.
Yeah, well, we did some acoustic tracks because we wanted to make sure that the people that liked Gordon's acoustic music and liked the acoustic music that I've done in the past, you know, got part of what they expected. But then, being a musician, you always want to try and push the boundaries, or you know, I think you should be always trying to do something that keeps you interested rather than doing the same thing again and again. And I think a lot of people were expecting Gordon to do just an instrumental album, and he's the first to say that he's really enjoyed working with a vocalist, and also I think it's good to surprise people every now and then. It's good to put something out that people aren't expecting.
Sure, but there is one more surprise. Weren't you intimidated to be playing acoustic guitar together with Gordon, because you credited also for an acoustic guitar, not also keyboards?
Oh, no, I did a little bit of electric guitar actually, and it was only on one song, and it was really because it was a song that I wrote that I was working on at home, and I said to Gordon, look, he'd given me lots and lots of guitars for it, and I said, look, I just want to do a little bit of heavy electric guitar. This is what this song needs, and he just said to me, have you done it? And I said, well, I've done it, but you can replace it. And he said, no, it sounds great, just leave it. So he was quite happy to just leave me a little bit, because what it is, I played guitars for a long time, nowhere near the standard of Gordon. But he came to my house and he picked up one of my guitars and he said, this is a bit of a mess. So he took it away and he fixed it. And then when he gave it back to me, I used it to play on that song. And then I said to him, I said, it's only on there because you fixed the guitar. So he was quite happy for it to stay.
And if we're talking guitar playing, how do you rate yourself as a guitarist as such, and in comparison with your brother, who I saw play guitar with Ozzy?
Uh, I don't really play a lot, to be honest with you. I use it more as a songwriting tool, and as a texture tool when I'm working on songs, because I feel as a writer, because I do a lot of writing, that if I sit at the piano all the time and just write at the piano, you end up with a very similar type of music. And I like the idea that sometimes you pick up a guitar and a song comes from a guitar, because you can change the tuning, or you're playing a different set of chords to where you would normally go with the piano. And I find that if I sit and play the piano, sometimes because I played the piano to a certain standard, you end up working the piano part more and more and more. And sometimes it's nice with the song just to have something lighter or something just creating a rhythm, which it's a different style of songwriting to the piano. So that's really why I play the guitar. And I'm an okay guitarist. I'm no Gordon Giltrap, but I can do a few things, but it's not something that I sort of do publicly very much.
But Adam does it.
Adam does it, yeah. Adam's always enjoyed the guitar. I think, to be honest with you, when we were kids, we always had keyboards in a room and guitars in a room. And I think he just likes jumping around on stage.
And more so, you did also an artwork for this album, as you did for your previous albums, but this one stands out because of this, I don't know, it's Japanese influenced.
Well, what I did, I when I was at college, I did graphic design when I was at college, and for years I did graphic design work and website work, and I used to do Steve Hackett's tour programs and tour posters actually years ago. And when it came to this project, I found a girl who had put together that image, a girl called Liliana Sanchez from Portugal. And she'd put together the images, and I thought they were terrific. So I wrote to her and said, look, these images that you've put together just match the project that Gordon and I are working on. Can we use them? And we came up with an agreement. And then I just spent a lot of time working with those images, putting the artwork together to make sure that it created the right atmosphere and the text. So I do more of the layout to make it look as I want it to. But she has to be credited with creating the actual image itself, because it's superb.
Ah, all right. And then you mentioned that it's not a concept album, but there is a certain theme on it. It's financial.
But
And I even was tempted when I was writing a review of it that you didn't see yet, as I didn't post it. Because I have my site moving to another location.
Yeah.
I even was tempted to think that from a tone of a card can have this connotation of a credit card, as well as as lyrical thing.
It's actually to do with card reading. People reading.
Yes, sure,
People
but
reading.
there are some meanings,
Well,
underlying.
yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Everybody, that's one of the nice things I think about music, is that people can hear a song. As a writer, I write something because of something that's happened to me. What generally happens is I write a song because something happens to me, and then I work it in my head into a story that happened to somebody else. So I expand on this story and I finish the story off. And then I write the song. And what's great about music is the fact that other people will listen to a piece of music and they will hear something different in it. And it can sometimes, other people's imaginations take the story somewhere else. And I think that's great about music.
I'm starting to be green with envy, because as a lyricist myself, I always find it hard to write a story. I prefer to be working in
Right. Yeah, I think it's different. Everybody writes in different ways, and I think it's when you're creative and you have ideas, it's really what suits you, what comes out the best way as to how you think. Like you say, you think in images. I just always thought in stories. I've always because I think if I did it purely personal, I would get too involved with it, and I think sometimes it's easier to use that as a starting point, and then I kind of stand back and then think about this emotion or whatever as being my starting point. And I think it's quite good fun. I enjoy writing like that. It's how I feel quite comfortable.
But Raven is very, to my ears, personal and emotional because of these personal dedications. I bet that OJW is dedicated to your wife.
Yeah, LJW is my wife, and the track one for Billy is dedicated to Gordon's wife, Hillary.
Yes, so it's very personal. So how do you find this balance between personal and public and these financial credit scenes?
Well, what happens with the song for my wife is because musicians' wives, they have to put up with a lot. They have musicians. They're either if you're doing it professionally all the time, you're disappearing away from home for long periods of time, which means it's difficult for families. Or if it's just, if it's somebody who is married to somebody who goes and plays, after they finish work, it's, music becomes something that people get so involved with. And I just wanted to write a piece for my wife that basically said, thank you. Thank you for putting up with all the silliness that musicians do. And I think it's important. You have to remember that there's a family and there's other people involved in a life to help musicians do what they do. And the only way that musicians can put something down that will last for years and years and years is by writing a piece of music about it. So something like that is very personal. And also I find very personal pieces, I find they're easier if they're instrumental because you're putting everything through melody rather than words.
I have a lyric called "You dreamed I was in love with someone else" because that was a dream of my wife. So from that I wrote a song.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, you know where I'm coming from then. It's very difficult. They do put up with a lot because I imagine you disappear sometimes into lyric world and she wants you to do the washing up.
Yeah, and then other moments when your wife said that you'd rather be back working in a bank.
Well, I think all people would sometimes look for the stability and the normality, but my family, unfortunately, has never been normal. I grew up in a household that was very unusual, and then as I've grown up, I mean, I've done normal day-to-day jobs, and then I've done silly jobs where I've traveled around the world, and it's all experiences, and you can draw from all aspects of life. When I was working in graphic design, I worked with musicians and I got to see the other side of the world where you're trying to present the artist in a certain way. When I worked in a day-to-day job, I found that, it was nice with having, the normality, but then you miss the silliness of going away and playing.
But
and
you don't work in bank anymore?
Not anymore, no. I stopped that when I started working with Yes and Straubs back in 2008.
But
yeah.
How did that work informed these financial themes of your new album?
Well, there are certain elements that do seep through into that album. There's always lines in songs. The main song, which is this the last song I write, is one of those moments where I was working for a band that was touring a lot and working around the world, and you become part of that band, you become part of that world. And then I think when I got home, I sat down and started trying to write more music, and you suddenly realize that if you want to do something else, you've got to do something that is based for yourself rather than for somebody else all the time. And and also when you're writing as a musician, you always worry that you're running out of ideas. I mean, this album for me is album number 10, number 11. I lose count, and you always wonder whether you really have, whether there's anything new to say or whether there's a new melody that you can find. And I was writing that song, and that's where it all came from. Is this, have I emptied the well of my creativity? Is that all I can do, or is there more to come? And when you first start writing, I wouldn't say it's easy because you don't have the experience, but it's easier because you haven't used things before. And then when you get into later records, you suddenly think, oh, I can't do that because I did that back on Jabberwocky, or I can't do that because I did it that time with Steve Howe. So you're always looking for new ideas. And I'm not one for going back and just copying what I did before. I always like to do something different.
But I meant songs like Credit Carnival and Manufacturing.
Yeah.
Has your work in a bank back in the day somehow infused this subject matter?
Yeah, I think so. And also the fact that Paul Manzi, who's singing on the song, also sang in my band as well, means it's one of those songs that does have a style that fits with my band. But the thing that I tried to do was really make use of Gordon's guitar playing on those songs to really give it another dimension, which I think he does, because he has such a unique way of playing the acoustic guitar that when he comes in on the song, you sort of think, wow, that's unusual, and I like that as well.
Yeah, but lyrics have nothing to do with your banking work.
No, Credit Carnival is to do with a song. When I was on tour with Yes, we played in a casino in America, and I was walking around, and you could see some people who were really used to being in casinos and knew how they worked and were, controlling their wins or controlling their losses. And then you saw people that just sort of went in there for a bit of fun. And then you saw some people that were a little out of their depth. And you could see that they were spending more money than they should be. And I picked up my phone and just started writing lyrics into my phone. And it was during the beginning of the credit crunch. And so the word credit kept going into my head. And then I was thinking about this casino being like a carnival, the flashing lights and, spinning wheels. And I thought, oh, it's almost like people are just borrowing money to come and spend it in this building, which is just flashing lights and like a carnival. So that's where the idea came for that. It's Credit Carnival, and it's all. And then I wrote this story about a man spending his money, which he doesn't have, and then going home and pretending that he didn't. And that's where the song came from.
And when you play with all these different bands, now there's like a pattern that you've been following in your dad's wake. With Yes, Stropes, Gordon. Do you feel comfortable with that?
I mean, the thing about it is that makes it okay for me is the fact that they all came to me and asked me. I didn't actively go out and phone up Yes and say, hey, can I play with you? Or the same with the Straubs. The Yes phone call came through because I'd worked with Steve Howe before, and Dad had recommended me. And then the Straubs just phoned up and said, hey, are you free? And I said, yeah, I'm free. And they said, would you come out and play in Canada? So I went, well, okay. And then when I finished with Yes and finished with Straubs, I was back home writing, and then Gordon phoned me up. So it's very rewarding that people who have such are so well known, want to phone me up and say, we'd like to work with you. It's very nice, and that makes it easier. It makes it easier because I didn't go out and say to them, hey, you're not working with Dad anymore, would you like to work with me? It made it work better because they came to me.
Yes, but when you're looking for the next best thing, the closest thing to what they want, it's like with Deep Purple when they had Don Airey instead of John Lord.
Yeah,
it was the the closest one, and thank God that when Richie went that they didn't hire Yngwie Malmsteen and opted for Steve Morse.
Yeah,
If I was looking for the next best thing to Rick Wakeman, who can play in his style, but to add and also add something more, I'd go to you.
yeah. Well,
It's kind of obvious, you know.
yeah. Well, I suppose so. And there's not much I can do about that.
But how well do you know the material of Strobes or Yes to go out and play, or you have to do a big homework?
Oh, lots of homework. When I started with Yes, I had a week's rehearsal on my own at home to learn the music, and then I had 2 weeks with them in a rehearsal room for 4 or 5 hours a day, and that was it. And then we went out and did a 3.5 hour show, and that was a lot of music to learn. And what was difficult about that is that even though they hadn't played together for 4 years as a band, they had played this music for 40 years, and I had never played any Yes music at home. You know, I'd never sat down and worked out roundabout just for fun. So I was having to learn everything from scratch, which was hard work. But it's part of the job. You get down and do it. And the same with the Strawbs. I mean, I knew the songs, some of the songs. Same with the Strawbs, I knew some of the songs. But knowing the songs to listen to and enjoy is different to speeding and as to listening to the songs and really trying to work out what part is there helping make the sound. It's a different discipline.
Yeah, but how much freedom were you given, for instance, in Yes, to play, to extemporize, to improvise from the original parts?
Not a lot, because what they wanted to do for that tour, or the tours that I worked with, was for many years Dad had been with the band and he had been changing parts and doing things differently because he was there originally and he'd earned the right to change things around a little bit. But the rest of the band were very keen to play things exactly as they were on the record. So when I came along, they said to me, how do we play this? We'd like to do it as per the record. And I thought, well, I don't have a problem with that, because I didn't want to turn up and start pretending to be Dad, making things up and changing things, because I hadn't earned the right to do that. So I was quite happy to go back and perform the music as if it was on the record, because people hadn't heard the original solo from And You and I for an awful long time, because Dad always made something different up every night or did a different solo. And so the thing that I could bring was some authenticity back to the music. And then as we developed on the tour, there was little moments where I got to add things and do things, but I tried to stay true to the music as much as I could.
But how interesting is it for you to be working with instrumentalists? Because you worked with Steve Howe, with Clive Nolan, with Rachel Heffer. Is it more rewarding than work with in a song format?
I like all of them, to be honest with you. I think if I just worked in one format, I would get bored. If I look at my albums they've released, they've all been slightly different. And even between Jabberwocky and the Hound and the Baskervilles, which were similar sort of albums, I did the album with Steve Howe, and then I did an album called Chakras, which was a relaxation album. So I always like to write how I'm feeling or what interests me, rather than, some bands just do an album, then the next album comes out and it's a similar sort of album, and that works for them. You know what you're going to get with a Bon Jovi album. It's going to be pretty much the same the next time round, with just new songs played in the same sort of style. And a lot of that is down to John Bon Jovi being a vocalist, but being an instrumentalist, primarily being a keyboard player, it's interesting for me to vary my style and the ways that I work.
Yeah, but Nolan, he's also a keyboard player, and it's not so often when one keyboard player works with the other keyboard player. What springs to mind? I don't know. The Don Airy and who was the other? And John Lord playing like
Yeah, I mean,
keyboard duel.
yeah. Well, Clive and I, we just became friends. We met through a radio station. I was working at a radio station, and Mick Pointer came down to do an interview to do with the new Arena album. And he just said, "Oh, you should come up and visit us." And I live in a house, and you can come and meet Clive. So I came up and met Clive, and we got on pretty well, and went out for a drink. And then he said, we should write something together. We're both keyboard players that both like writing, big scale projects. Why don't we do something together? And so we did. And the first one, Jabberwocky, got great reviews, went down really well, and so we were asked to do another one, which we did, and that went down very well as well. But then I think you develop as you do things. You don't want to keep doing the same thing all the time because people will get bored of it.
Yeah, you still keep in secret who played what on those albums, but whose idea it was to do an album around a famous story. Yours?
I think it started off with us just coming up with different ideas, and we had two ideas for the first album. We decided on doing either Hound of the Baskervilles or Jabberwocky. There were two things that we liked. We both just wrote down ideas, and I think we both came up with Jabberwocky. And we said, right, well, okay. And we both liked Sherlock Holmes, so we both had a Sherlock Holmes written down. And what we did, we were looking for artwork, and I phoned up Rodney Matthews, who was a friend of mine, and I said, we're doing this album. We'd like you to do the artwork. Can you tell me, what artwork you have, what artwork you would do, what you would charge, the usual questions. And he said to me, well, what are you doing the music on? And I said, well, we haven't decided yet, but we're thinking of, Sherlock Holmes or Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. And he said, I've just finished a painting of the Jabberwocky. And we thought, right, well, we'll do the Jabberwocky then.
To be honest with you, as much as I liked Jabberwocky, I found Baskerville more generic, not as interesting. When I put on Jabberwocky for the first time, and recently when I gave it another spin, it was, from this overture into Bob Catley's vocals on the first track, it was, delight throughout.
Oh, thanks.
But with the second one, it's generic to my ears.
I think the thing with the second one that was different was the fact that it involved a lot more heavy standard type guitar. We had Carl Groom play on it, and we had Arjen Lucassen play on it. So we had a lot more of a heavier edge to the music. Whereas with Jabberwocky, Peter Banks did most of the guitar, and I think that added a sort of lightness to the album, which was quite fun. And I think with Hound, it just became a darker album, partly because of the story. But it's interesting that you say that, because some people write to me and say we prefer Hound over Jabberwocky. It's interesting. I mean, I like Jabberwocky because I think it's got an innocence to it. It's a nice innocent story, and it's musically fun.
There are people who prefer a particular style of music, but I listen to everything from jazz to classical, through different forms of rock, save for the extreme metal or rap. To me, it wasn't a heaviness problem. It was, perhaps the melodies. But I liked Mother Ruin.
Oh, right.
It's a straight away hard rock. It's also, I would call, a generic hard rock album. But that was exactly what you expected. What I didn't expect from it, that you were there more in a composer and arranger role rather than a soloist. Was it an initial idea to stay behind the scene and steer the ship?
Yeah, I wanted to, because I think with Hound and Jabberwocky, I got to do part of it. I wrote some of the lyrics and I wrote some songs. I mean, You know, a lot of there were only a few pieces on Jabberwocky and Hound that we wrote together. A lot of them were songs that we wrote individually and then sort of added to. But with Mother's Ruin, I wanted to do something that was just like a standard five-piece band, but I wanted to do it in a way where, you know, I could explore songwriting from from working on a book or from a novel. I wanted to do something that was me writing, you know, as I explained for the Ravens, you know, from personal ideas into stories, and the way that I felt that was best way to do that was to do it with a band, and then it also gave me the opportunity of taking that band out and playing live, because doing Jabberwocky live or the Hound live was very difficult because of the number of people that were involved and the different types of musicians that were on it. So I wanted to do something where I could record an album and then actually take all of the people, you know, that were on the album, you know, out, and we could play places, and we could, you know, just explore, you know, performing as part of a band. It's all part of it's all part of the journey for me. It's, you know, it's exploring, working with different people, working with different styles of musicians, and working in different formats. And I hadn't done a band album, and I like the idea of doing one. So, but I wanted to write it. It was important for me to still be in charge of the ship, as it were.
Yeah, but are you still bitter about your songwriting, the way your songwriting went into Yes when you were asked to leave the band?
Yeah, I mean, that was difficult because you know, what happened was we were writing an album, and we started talking about the album in 2009, and then in 2010 we went to Phoenix in Arizona and started writing, and we came up with some really, really good music. But I think what happened was when we went to the studio and started recording, Trevor Horn came in to record, and he had an idea about the album, and he wanted to do one of his old songs, an old song that he'd worked with Jeff Downes. And I wasn't very keen on this, because I thought, well, we should be doing new music. We shouldn't be doing a song that's 20 years old. We should be doing, you know, stuff that we have worked out, or stuff that we're going to write or work on together. But he wanted to do this song, so we did this song. And then I think he said, oh, well, I've written another part that goes with this song with Jeff, and so they wanted to do that song, so Jeff was involved in that one. And then I think he decided that there was more and more songs that he had written with Jeff that matched the We Can Fly From Here song. And so I think he just said, look, I want to do the album like this, and I want Jeff to play the keyboards on it and write it. And so I think that's what happened. They just got to the point where Trevor had come up with so much of the music, and he'd written so much of it with Jeff, he just wanted Jeff in the band. And so that's what happened, which wasn't very good for me, but, you know, that's the decision they made.
It's interesting. How wise were Steve Howe and Steve Hackett in their GTR project to keep Jeff as a producer and sometimes co-writer, but don't let him in to play.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, but you know, with yes, this situation, how did you react to this on a personal level? I mean, you must have known all these guys from you know, from your early childhood.
Yeah.
And, you should have felt like being in a family with Yes.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
to be put it out. How did you feel?
I felt terrible. I felt really bad because I wasn't expecting it. I went home for Christmas. We were recording, and then Trevor went away for 4 weeks, and we carried on recording, and then we went on tour together for 3 weeks, and then we all said goodbye at the airport. And I said, look, you know, they all said, well, we'll see you in 3 weeks' time, or in 2 weeks' time. And so I went home and I had Christmas, and then I phoned up. No, that was it. I was due to go out back in January, and then the tour manager phoned me up and said, oh, your plane ticket is delayed by a week because Trevor wants to do one more song with Jeff. And I said, well, okay. And then I phoned up again the week later and they said, oh, it's been delayed by another week. I went, well, okay. I'm not very happy, but, if Trevor wants Jeff on those two tracks, then, Trevor will have Jeff on those two tracks. And then I phoned up and then somebody just said to me, you're out of the band. And that was it. My ticket was cancelled and I know I wasn't involved in it anymore.
So family is family and business is business.
I guess so. Yeah. They just decided that was the route that they were going to follow, the route that Trevor was setting out for them. And so that's the route that they went. They obviously all decided with Trevor that that's what they wanted from the album. It was a shame, but that's the decision they made. It's their band, so. But it wasn't easy.
But still, they used your song, and you used a song on this new album that Benoit sang from those times. So.
Yeah, well, the song that From the Turn of a Card I wrote while I was living in LA. We were living out there for 8 weeks while we were recording, and Benoit and I shared an apartment. And one day he went out for a walk or something, and I just said to him, can I borrow your guitar? And I sat down and I just wrote the main part of the song, From the Turn of a Card. And then the next day I went to the studio and played it to everybody, and they all thought it was really good and really liked it. And then we went out on tour. And so by the time we got back from the tour, obviously, and then I never went back to the studio, so we never got to do it. So when I came to do this album, I played it to Gordon, and he really liked it, and he said, we've got to do that song. And as we had Paul singing the album, I said to Gordon, look, I really think that Benoit will do the best job on this, because it was a song that was written for him to sing originally. And so I phoned up Benoit and I said, hey, do you want to do it? And he said, yeah. So that was why. So it was just the right person for the song and for the song's history.
By the way, you once mentioned that you and Adam accompanied the Anderson Bruford Wakeman House tour. So did you play or just were guests of your dads?
No, we were only, that was 1988. I was 16 and Adam was 14. No, we just got on an aeroplane and went around America with Dad and the band, just watching the show and having fun. That was great fun. 16 years old, wandering around America. It was a good laugh.
Yeah, and speaking of this, using parts and pieces in the song, when I listened to the Strokes album, I found it strange that you were credited for one or two of the pieces, while your parts completely, upgraded tracks like, if I'm not mistaken, Beneath the Angry Sky. So why weren't you credited for more than you were credited for?
Oh, well, I didn't really write Beneath the Angry Sky. That was done by, the opening part was written by Dave Lambert as a chord idea. And the song that I wrote was the hymn at the end of the Pro Patria suite, which was a song called, can't remember the title of it now. Where the heart.
I look it up.
Yeah, well, we'll find that. We'll find that one. I'm sure it's here somewhere. Actually, I've got it in my iTunes. Let me find it here. Dancing. There it is. What song was it called? It's just part of the Pope Tragedy. Home is where the heart was ever, I think is what it was called. And what happened was Dave Cousins came. He rented a house in the countryside, and we went there to work on the music that he'd written.
Like Traffic did.
Yeah, and he basically wrote this song about. He thought it was going to be a love song at first of all, but then he went over to the war graves over in France, and he realised that the lyrics that he were writing that were about two people talking about their love for each other weren't actually about a man and a woman. It was about soldiers and the camaraderie that they had growing up in a village together and going and fighting in the war together. And so he changed this story from being a love song into a sort of a song of two people who grew up together and then went and fought, and one of them dies. And he said at the end of the song, he said, I want to have a hymn, a piece of music that sounds like a hymn. He said, but I can't. He said, I've got some lyrics. He said, but I don't have any music. He said, do you have anything? And I said, well, if you're looking for something that's hymn-like, I said, I've got this piece which I've written, which I've never really used. And when I played it to him, he put his words on top of it, and he said, that's incredible. He said, my words fit exactly with the melody line you've written. And he sang it while I played it, and it just fitted perfectly. So that's how I ended up with the writing credit.
But all those solos of yours that you add to the album, they didn't give you the credit for it?
No, I don't. I don't expect a credit for writing a solo. That's just me adding my performance to someone else's piece of music. The same way when Peter Banks plays a guitar solo on one of my songs, he's just adding his ideas to my songs. That's generally how I tend to work with musicians.
You know, it reminded me of my old conversation with Jim Corrigan, if you know the guy.
Uh-huh.
Who played with, Rod Stewart. So I asked him about the absence of writing credit for his acoustic solo on "Come Up and See Me, Make Me Smile."
Uh-huh.
The centerpiece of the song, and he says the same, that your solo don't give you credit.
Yeah, and no, I think it's generally understood between musicians. Otherwise, you could end up with hundreds of people writing songs if everybody comes in and wants that. The basic idea for me is if somebody's written a song, it's like a coat hanger. Everybody else hangs their ideas off the song, and that's how it always works. I mean, I played on Steve Howe's album Spectrum, and I added keyboard parts to it, but he'd written the songs, and then I just added things to it. But if somebody else has come up with the main song, then it's their song.
And what with your love for heavier music, how interesting was it for you to work with Chris Sangaridis, famous for his work with Thin Lizzy and other heavy bands, Gary Moore?
Oh, working with Chris was great. It's ever such a nice guy. Very good at engineering and producing. And yeah, I just enjoy working with him. He was good fun. He was very, very laid back. He had a nice studio that was by the seaside. It was great.
And another album of yours, the earliest album, Heaven Isle. I'd say that of your really genuinely solo albums, it's my favorite one.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's quite. It's 15 years old now. It's frightening. It makes me feel really old.
You're just 2 years older than me, so it's not a problem, It was very strange to me when I interviewed Joe Bonamassa, who's younger than me, because I never did that before.
Yeah, it's strange. I watch. I'm a big fan of Formula One, and I watch the racing drivers now, and they just look like 12-year-olds to me. It's frightening. They just look like they're so young, and you sort of think, wow, I'm getting old.
Yeah, but most of the people I interviewed from Paul McCartney down the line, they're older than me. For the people who play my favorite music in the 70s and the 60s, but Bonamassa, he's younger.
Yeah,
the people shock.
It does become that. Yes, you do. I mean, I watch my son grow up, and he's 7.5 now, and I think, oh, that's just making me feel older and older.
Mine is 6.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because you know what age you had the children at, so you know how much older you are now.
Yeah, but still, Heaven's Isle is a mature work.
I think so. It was something I worked really hard on, and the thing that I loved about Heaven's Isle is that it has an innocence about it. Even though the songwriting, I mean, I play some of the music from Heaven's Isle. The music that I play on Heaven's Isle was mature, and as I've been playing it on this recent tour, I've been listening, working out what I've played, and I thought, God, that's quite complicated, and but the thing that I like about it is I didn't have a lot of equipment, so I didn't have loads and loads and loads of keyboards to work with. I only had a few keyboards that I'd bought, and so I had to work really hard to make the album sound interesting with these few keyboards that I had, which was really challenging. But I'm very proud of the album. It's a strange thing because for a few years I kind of forgot about it because Jabberwocky came out and had lots of singers and lots of guitarists, and then I did the thing with Steve Howe, and then I did the Hound, and then I took a band out on the road and we did DVDs, and then I joined Yes, and it all, everything got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then one day I just sort of picked up Heaven's Isle and put it on, and I thought, actually, that's really nice. It's really interesting. You sort of think because it doesn't have tons of stuff going on it, it's not as interesting, but it was interesting because it didn't have lots of things going on.
But what these things with islands in the Wakeman family? Rick wrote about Isle of Man. You wrote about this island.
Yeah, Lundy. Yeah, I don't know what it is. We must just need to get away.
And what about this project of yours that I also mentioned, Mysteries and Mythology?
That's Mysteries and Mythologies was what became the Three Ages of Magic. That was how it started off, because it started off as an album about myths and fairy stories, and then I had the cover done with myths and mythologies, and I'd worked it all through, and then I read somewhere about the Ages of Magic, which were how things are perceived as magic. Like in the Dark Ages, magic, anything that happened that was unusual was considered magic. And then through the Renaissance, parlor tricks and things with that sort of sleight of hand came into play. And then modern day science, which if anybody was looking at it that didn't know came from a different civilization, would think that it was magical. And I read this term, which was the Three Ages of Magic, and I thought, that fits my story better. So the title got changed from Myths and Mythology to Three Ages of Magic.
So if you ever come up to compose with Nolan again, so would you tackle something like Terry Pratchett?
I don't know. I
mean this magic stuff and modern stuff.
Yeah, I don't.
Fantasy story, not classic story.
Yeah, I don't know actually. We've sort of mentioned that somebody might be putting out Jabberwocky and Hound again soon, because they've been out of print for a while. So I think they're going to be reissued, which will be nice. But whether we'll do another one together, I don't know at the moment. We'll wait and see. You never know.
By the way, but it just occurred to me that dawned on me what the main difference between Jabberwocky and the Hound. There was a humor in the former, and
Yes.
not a lot of it in the later.
No, there wasn't. No, no, that's true. But I think you're right. Jabberwocky for me is a little bit like a children's story, whereas The Hound of the Baskervilles is an adult story.
And what about the Star Castle project? Did you really play on their album?
No, I didn't do anything like that. I just played with them for a show. Just help out.
But you should have played. No, they didn't.
No, it's never meant to be anything like that. I just helped them out. That's just something I did once to help out some friends. But I still keep in touch with some of the guys, and they all work. But pretty much everything I did was focused on my band at that time. I was looking, my band got out to Poland where we played and recorded the DVD. So my band was my focus.
And what role do you prefer, as a band leader or being just a player in a band?
I think I like being a band leader because I get to control what I'm doing, and I generally get to experiment and try different things. But I also enjoy working as a part of the band because it's a different discipline. You get to learn. As a musician, you are always learning, and when you work with other musicians, it's great because everybody plays differently. Everybody does things slightly differently. And I find that's great. It's inspirational. You can sit and play with one bass player and think, oh yeah, I really like the way this guy does this. And then you play with another bass player and he'll play the same part but in a slightly different way. And you think, oh, that's interesting. And I enjoy all forms of music and playing with all forms of people. But as most musicians, you like to do your own thing. So I would always, I'd say I like being a band leader, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy touring and playing with other bands as well. There's lots of bands I think are very good, but whether I'd want to play with them, I don't know. It'd be dependent on whether they call me.
Okay, so I've been trying to avoid, all that obvious question that everybody asks you about. Yes, in common sense and about your father, but uh, can we compare your family to a family of Bach?
Oh, I don't know. That's very very nice if they did. It's,
There's an interesting thing that uh, in Johann Sebastian Bach family, he was the least famous during his lifespan than his sons. But
yeah.
could it be in your family the other way around, that in some distant future you'll be more famous, you and Adam, than Rick?
I don't know. I wouldn't even like to guess. I'm very proud of the work that Dad's done in his life, and he's he's built a legacy of work and admiration around the world from what he does.
You tell me. I think that his CD take an entire shelf of my of my collection.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, he does do a lot of work, but it's so I sort of feel that I've been, his the name Wakeman is known in the music world, and in some ways it makes me work really hard to make sure that everything that I do adds to the quality. I don't want to do things that people just go, yeah, it's okay. I want to do things that people go, actually, yeah, that fits up there. That's worth having in my collection. And as to whether, at some point I'll do something that will make me well known, throughout the world, it would be nice. But it's about doing good music and being able to do music that is the driving force. And I think if you start doing things to become well known, it can be you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And I've always done music because I've loved it. It's been hard work sometimes, but I still love it.
But you've never been a part of this Wakeman and Wakeman project. You worked separately from this project. Was it an idea that you're the oldest one and you're the mature one, and you can work on yourself in your own right, while Adam had to be working with your dad?
I don't know. I think what it was is just Adam and Dad started working together. Adam was living with Dad at the time, and they started working. But I always wanted to. I always was. I always wanted to do things my own way, which maybe made my life harder at the beginning because I didn't get to tour as much as Adam did when I was younger. But then again, Adam has done lots of work as a session musician for lots of different musicians, and he's created lots of good albums as well. And he's taken a path of doing lots of session work, whereas I've always taken a path of doing things that are under my own name. And everybody chooses paths that they think are the best for them. And Adam's successful. He works, and he's well respected, and it works for him. And I work on the projects I've done, and people like what I do. So, Adam and I will, we did play once with Dad together, and we're going to play actually in June.
In June. That was my next and the last question.
Yeah. So yes, we do little bits and pieces now. But Adam does what Adam does, and I do what I do. But the concert in June will be good fun because it's just one night, I think, and we're just going to have. We tend to have fun. It doesn't get too serious.
It will be interesting to compare, three different mindsets of three great keyboard players.
Yeah, I think as long
to
as
see the difference.
yeah, I think we'll all we have to take it in turns. I think it's going to be a bit busy, but we've done it once before on a Christmas concert, and it went quite well. So I think hopefully we'll behave.
Okay, so Oliver, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure and a very interesting conversation.
Oh, great. No, it's been lovely to talk. Well, I hope it all makes sense.
Yeah, I'll try to send you away a transcript of that for you to proofread,
Okay.
to be sure that everything is okay.
Yep.
But after I finish transcribing my interviews with John Lawton, of Uriah Heep and Dave Kilminster, who plays with Roger Waters now.
Yeah. Oh, so you got a bit of typing to do.
Yeah, and I don't even dare to ask you to have a look at my lyrics because you're a lyricist yourself.
It's always difficult. But I'm sure your work is very good. I've read good things.
You know, you didn't read my stuff, but there are some people that say that these are good, and these people are Jolene Turner, you know, of Rainbow and Deep Purple.
Oh, great.
And Andy Fraser from Free.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh, that's good. Oh, well, that's great then.
Yeah, we try to make some things, but it's still, you know, work in progress.
Oh, well, best of luck with it. I hope it works for you.
Yeah, thanks, and thank you again. So let's be in touch from time to time.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Anytime. That'll be great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and have a nice day.
And you, Dimitri. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.